Hey guys, Brent Hull, happy Wednesday. The design video today. I've got a traditional house with a lot of cut stone, a lot of cast stone, and just a few things that messed it up a little bit. And in about 3 or 4 different places, I'm gonna tweak these things, and it really does make a massive change. So check it out, let me know what you think. All right, so wanted to, try to fix this house, and in one part it's kind of like the transformer house because you've got this weird light pattern up here that looks like the transformer guy. Right there, does that look at the transformer? So it may be a house that transforms, just kidding. But they've got the same light pattern up here in every window. And it looks weird. It's not traditional, and it ends up looking alien-like. And so one, I'm going to fix these things. And in a lot of this house, I'm just kind of fixing traditional things, but I'm going to show you why it's lost in my mind and not as strong as it could be. Okay, so one, I'm going to change the roof. Okay, I'm going to keep a hip roof, but I'm going to change the hip roof to over here so that I can spread these dormers out. They're a little bit big. They've got a gable end dormer, okay, but there's no gable ends on this house. And so I'm gonna change them to a hip dormer. Go back to some traditional light patterns. I'm gonna de-emphasize all the cast stone. I mean, this is just, there's way too much cast stone in this house. Little things like these 3 paired windows, okay, with the kind of a transom over top of it is a little bit odd. Notice that the columns are sitting on a pedestal, okay? What happens is that when a column sits on a pedestal, it's not as strong as a column that kind of sits there by itself. And so they've actually done a good job of lining up the columns with the balustrade above, but the balustrade and this pedestal in particular is a little bit weak. And so anyway, basically you'll see that, I've taken the roof line, I've still kept their hip, but that allowed me to shrink the size and then spread out those dormers a little bit so that they would look a little bit better. I've shrunk them a little bit in size so that we have this hierarchy of graduated fenestration, right? So I got really big windows, smaller windows, and then smaller windows. That kind of scale and stuff, it really helps things look better. If you look at the baluster and look at that pedestal in particular, and you'll see that I've now got this column, which is a full column. It's not sitting on a pedestal anymore. So I no longer have that little porch thing. I don't think there's even a balustrade going on here. So this pedestal looks really weak just sitting out there all by itself. And so I've strengthened up the column, I've beefed up the pedestal above, I've taken off that little ball up there. I just don't think that looks very good. And so the scale of it's kind of messed up. And so I've strengthened the columns, changed the windows, gotten rid of all of the heavy cut stone, got rid of the transformer windows. And this really, I think, kind of gets into a real handsome little house. The entry was this arched entry, and so I'm still giving them that traditional federal arched entry, but I'm just kind of using historic precedent to kind of give it something a little bit more oomph. I've taken those 3 paired windows. There really isn't a precedent in a colonial revival to have 3 paired windows like that. So I've gone back to just 2 windows on either side, beefed up the things. You'll notice the little things like this column is sitting up underneath the beam, and it never should do that. It actually should sit, that the capital for this beam ought to be sticking outside of that. And so there is a relationship between the capital and the neck of the column, okay? So this would be the neck. And then where that beam sits above, okay, so my entablature and the neck starts on this same line, okay? And then when they do it like they've done it here, where the capital sits completely up underneath the beam, it just kind of looks goofy. You'll notice I've increased the size of that entablature, right? I've brought it down a little bit and moved it back in the house and across here, which cuts out those arches. But right now, this column is basically supporting the ceiling. There's no entablature there. And so I've actually dropped down a beam so it can be stronger and carry that. So not a ton of stuff, but I think it does help this house. Just practicing traditional details and traditional elements really, I think, help this house sing a little bit. And so, not a lot to do. And this is pretty, what I find with traditional architecture today is that it's just missing a bunch of the little parts and pieces that if they would just practice kind of that traditional design details, they would have a more successful house. Okay guys, see how, fixing that column, fixing that pedestal, fixing the size and scale of the different parts and pieces, taking out all those arches, and even just changing the window light pattern to something more recognizable and not, transformer-ish, right? You may think you have to reinvent all of these things and come up with new ways of thinking about it, but you really don't. Practicing the past really does help us build better today.